like, and subscribe. This one is not for the kids, obviously, right? Obviously, right? I already see right now. Let me just let y'all know right now. This one is sponsored by Hendrix Gin. I hate to even put it out there. We just gonna put it out there in the beginning. This is a tough one right here. This is a tough one. I see y'all want to get into a little DV today, right? A little domestic fiddle faddle. So I guess we gotta take it back to the Freaknik era of Hillman, huh? Okay, so we're going to talk about the class right after Dwayne and Whitley. All right, this is Gina, Dorian, Charmaine, Terrell, lame Terrence, remember him? And Lena. Oh yeah, and speaking of Lena, remember I did mention her. If you guys watching this, you probably watched my A Different World, What to Expect video and whatnot. I mentioned Jada Pinkett on that video. Well, as you can see, you know, she clearly don't have nobody else or nothing else better to do. You know, y'all know her kids is grown, so she got to stay active and whatnot, right? So that's neither here nor there. There's your umbrella, right? But yeah, this is a classic episode rant. A Different World, season 5, episode 22. Love taps. Yep. When the rapper Dion gave the baddie Gina a crazy eye jammy. Yeah. Now, rants have to make this crazy situation entertaining, but this isn't a laughing matter. Okay? Now, I usually start from the beginning of the episode, you know, but this story doesn't start there. It starts with Dion, actually, right? So let's start from the beginning with him. But before we even do that, I have to ask, right? And I think I spoke on this before, but where exactly is Hillman located? Now, the theory has always been Hampton, Virginia, and that's cool. But see, in Rant's world, I don't like to look at Hillman as being like a D3 alternate to Hampton University. So I always put them as equals in the MEAC, or better yet, matter of fact, let's just throw them in the CIAA, because that makes it make even more sense, right? So I put them in the CIAA, and you guys got to remember the Tidewater colleges, like in that area. We have we have Old Dominion in Norfolk State, I believe, in Norfolk. Of course, we got Hampton in Hampton, right? So, like, Hillman could either be located in either Newport News, Virginia, Chesapeake, Virginia, Portsmouth, Virginia, or my ideal location. This is where I like to think it's located, right? Suffolk, Virginia. And I say that because it's a little more rural than the other towns I just named, right? But it's still like 25 minutes away from those towns. See, those towns are fairly closer, you know, to each other and whatnot. My man Clockwork 1911, you are clearly a Kappa, right? Holla at me in the comments and let's chat about the location of Hillman, you know. But that's neither here nor there. Now that you know we spoke on the location, right? The rapper Dion. Do you know him? Well, because you know I do. I'm Rants, right? But see, before Dion pursued rapping, he attended Princess Anne High School in Virginia Beach. Yeah, his cousin is Anthony Gonzalez from Bayside. Do your homework on Anthony Gonzalez from Virginia Beach, right? But nonetheless, Dion played in the band, and that's where he met his best friend. Yeah, Pharrell Williams. Yeah, you guys didn't know that? Yeah. Dion played in the band with Pharrell. Yeah, and after they graduated, Pharrell, you know, he's taking music seriously. And Chad, he goes on to Old Dominion, of course. And Dion attends Hillman. See, because he's a nerd. And I know what you're thinking, like, Rants, here you go again. Like, I hate when you do this, you know. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and when you say that, I have to be like, well, who the hell is this? Paging me at 5:46 in the damn morning. Yep, it's Dion, that's who. Yep, remember when he was tutoring Charmaine and Terrell? Yeah, remember the French? Yeah, and you're probably like, well, you know, how did he just change overnight? And that's easy. That's very easy. See, Pharrell got to deal with Teddy Riley. Remember the song Rump Shaker? Yeah, it was around this time. Yeah. So he went to the studio one time with them and he felt he had to change his image, right? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You gotta wake up early if you want bump with rants. See, I get sick and tired of putting y'all on the game. Now I'm in my damn feelings. King Kong ain't got nothing on rants. Yeah. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm this Hendrix, and then I get in my feelings and I take it out on you guys, But that's what this episode's about anyway, right? Oh, did I mention I have a TikTok and an Instagram? Yeah, follow Rants on those platforms too. Yeah, that's neither here nor there. But where did we leave off? But yeah, Dion, he's the original third member of Nerd, and he's rhyming over early Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo beats. And they're due to drop their debut album, In Search Of. It's going to feature tracks like I Jammy Fanny, Chief Smacker Lady, and I used to read books, now I beat chicks. Y'all got to understand this is a different time. Gangster rap is in its infancy, right? It's just coming about. And Pharrell actually admitted this later on in his career in an interview. He said, and I quote, "I never really agreed with Dion's music, but he had a buzz and people were finally listening to me and Chad's beats. We were young. We didn't really care that much. That's end quote, right? And you got to remember, Dion's father was like, dude, this isn't you. You acting like a thug. I didn't raise you to be like that. And this led to Dion in his final semester at Hillman, right? And he plans to pursue rap when he graduates. He already had the connections, right? And he's buzzing, and NERD, they're about to blow up. And he's messing with Gina now, right? Now, that's a chick that he would have never got a year ago at Hillman, right? So he's a little insecure about that. And this is his first baddie. And that's when the episode happens, right? So let's get into it. Now we're at the famous pit located on Hillman's campus, of course, and we see Terrence walk in, and he announced to the campus that he lost his virginity, but of course nobody believes him, and he was lying anyway, right? And Whitley says, "Hey Lena, it befuddles me how a rap concert invokes more enthusiasm than an upcoming election." And Lena says maybe Byron should rap his next speech. And then Whitley busts into a freestyle with her cute little country accent. And Mr. Gaines, he tells her, "Quit now, Whitley Gilbert. You'll never be legit." And Gina says, "I'm very proud of my man. I can't remember seeing him this excited." And Lena says, "Gina, he gets excited whenever he sees a miniskirt." And Gina says, "Oh girl, you just jealous because my man is popular and yours is, oops, you don't have one." And now we see Dion kicking a old school funky flow. "See, girls are just freaks and that's all there is to it. One comes over to my cribs and says, 'Would you undo it?' So I slobbered, I squeezed, she wind up on me. She wanted the real thing and she wanted it rough." And then he says, "I'll kick the rest at the concert. If you all ain't there, you ain't down." And I'm thinking like, Dion, you didn't even care to finish your bar. That didn't even rhyme, buddy. Like, why? And then you keep talking about this guy for real? It's 1992. I don't know him. I don't know this guy that you speak of. But anyway, Terrence says, "That was smooth, but tell me something. Don't raps like that diss the sisters?" And then a random fly Hillman baddie walks up on Dion and says, "If you dedicate your next rhyme to me, I'll put you on my best friend list." And Dion says, "Damn!" Referring to that ham, of course, right? And then he asks Terrence, "I'm sorry, what was you saying, Troop?" And Terrence, he's trying to fit in because he's lame. He says, "Oh, I was saying, damn!" Of course, referring to the little baddies. Ham, of course, right? And now Ron Johnson walks into the pit and he sees a little baddie on his way in. And he says, "Damn!" Once again, referring to the little baddie's ham, right? And he walks over to the table and he says, "Oh, what a majestic sight to behold. Such grace, such charm." And Whitley says, "Such bull. Gina, watch your purse, baby." And Ron says, "Gina, I come in the spirit of generosity. I want to do your boyfriend a solid. With my dedication and with I'm down to peel, we could be living fat." See, I forgot to tell you guys, Dion's rap name is I'm Down Dion, right? Neither here nor there, right? So Dion walks up and Gina says, "Oh, Dion, Ron wanted to ask you about a job." And Ron gives Dion a business card, right? And Dion says, "Ron John's constant promotion?" And Ron say, "Hey, if that don't work, I can do the electric slide while I mop." And Dion, he's like, all right, enough. All right, I tell you what, let me see some of your hype in action. And Ron tells Dion, "Man, I'll be like Don King in the Thriller of Manila." And then he spits a whack freestyle to hype up Dion. But he's still hired. See, you gotta understand, that's Ron Johnson. I don't care if they try to make Dwayne Wayne like the main character. No. That's not the case when it comes to popularity on Hillman's campus, okay? He's put in work on that campus. He is the most popular dude on that campus next to Dion and Whitley. And that's just because Whitley is who she is and Dion raps now. But now we see Ron, he's selling a ticket outside and he says, "Hey, business is booming, man." And Dion asks, "What you think it's going to sell out?" And Ron confident. He like my dad always said, "Washington face may be on a dollar, but it got my name on it." And Dion says, "Man, your pop sound chill. Mine says rap is for punks too lazy to get a real job." And Ron says he'll get over it. My pop used to feel the same way about my music. And Dion's cocky because he got the Teddy Riley connect. So he says he should. And then Gina walks up, to her group of friends and proceeds to show off these cheap shoes. All right. And she's like, "I know it's not in my nature, but just this once." And I'm thinking I know females' clothes don't have to be expensive. They just have to be quote unquote cute. But look at these damn shoes, okay? Just look at them. Females in the comments, these shoes are ugly. But let me know. Am I wrong? Were these shoes cute back then? Let me know, okay? And Whitley says, "Oh, look at that bruise." And Gina pulls her pants leg down quick and says, "Oh girl, coffee table. Y'all like my shoes? Dion picked them out." And Whitley says, "Did you keep the receipt?" Because those cheap things clearly don't impress Whitley, right? And Freddie storms in the pit and says, "Hey, my sisters, I witnessed a crime last night. I saw a woman being beaten. I was on the roof, having my moon meditation, and then I hear a noise and I see a man and he grabs this woman by the hair and he drags her down to the ground. See, it was too dark, but I yelled and then he took off, and the sick part about this whole story is the girl limped off after him." And Gina says, "That tofu you eating is giving you nightmares." And Whitley agrees. And Freddie tells Whitley, "I just said that I saw a woman being beaten. I demand that you call an emergency dorm meeting. What if it was somebody that we know?" And Whitley says, "Freddie, if something like that was going on in my dorm, I would know about it." And Kim say, "Aren't you forgetting 8 episodes prior to this when E.H. Wright didn't believe your sexual harassment claims?" And Whitley says, "Okay, dorm meeting at 8 o'clock. And now we see Dion on the Hillman radio show, and he's telling everybody, there's still a few tickets left for you last minute losers. But as they say, better late than no jam at all. You know what I'm saying? And Terrence is just dancing in the background looking like a damn idiot. Dude, get a life, And Gina walks in, she's a baddie, and Dion kicks Terrence out with the quickness, and Terrence lame ass saying Dion whack bars, that's going to make him lose his virginity, right? Talking about some girls are freaks and that's all there is to it. One comes over to my crib and say, "Could you undo it?" You just heard that song. Nobody's ever told you that, Terrence. Ever. And Dion say, "Hey, honey dip, I see you sporting those kicks." And Gina say, "Yeah, they didn't have them in black." And Dion say, "Yeah, but you still got it going on. What do you say I make your favorite tonight? steak, mashed potatoes, corn. I know you like that corn. And then he say, damn, a brother can't get his girl to smile? And Gina say, Dion, Freddie saw us last night. She knows what happened. And now Dion know it. He asks, who did she tell? And Gina says, everybody. But she didn't see our faces. And then she asks, Dion, why do I make you so angry? And side note, when she said that, man, I felt that. Because she a baddie. And you see her face like, oh, man. Like, this dude is scum. And Dion says, it's not you. I'm sweating this concert. My whole career's riding on this. What if my father's right? What if I am a loser? And Gina says, you're not a loser. You're the best. And Dion says, you know, before I came back to school this semester, he decked me. Because I wouldn't quit rapping. I just want to prove him wrong. And he says, Gina, I love you. I'll never, never touch you again unless it's like this. And starts kissing Gina passionately, right? And then he tells her, you know, just make sure Ron don't be hanging on you no more. Remember what I told y'all. Dion is insecure and a fake thug and has daddy issues. But Ron is just as popular as he is on that campus, and he know Ron will poke a revolving character on that show. Oh, yes, he will. But Gina says, Ron? We're just friends. And Dion says, well, your friends shouldn't be whispering in my girl's ear. Why do you think I hired him anyway? Look, I like to keep my girl close and my enemies even closer. And Gina says, doesn't seem like you want me close in public. The only time you're affectionate is when we're alone. And Dion, you know, he gets upset. He was like, what, I'm supposed to put on a show for you and your skis friends? And Gina offended. She says, hold up. My friends are not skis. And Dion says, oh, so you the only one? And Gina like, you know what? I got homework to do. And walks off. And I'm down Dion, right? He grabs her arm aggressively and like, he yelling at her like, who you studying with? Don't walk away. Don't walk away from me. And Gina's like, you're hurting me. Let go. Get off of me. Let go. And now Whitley's holding her dorm meeting. And she says, remember, ladies, if you can get into a bad relationship, you can get out. If you can't come to me, seek help elsewhere. Please, Freddie's passing out some hotline calling cards right now. And here go Freddie. That's right, my sisters. You must never be ashamed to say, hey, I'm in trouble. And looks right at Kim, right? And then proceeds. Battery is the leading cause of injury among women. Let's call this what this is. This is not a domestic dispute. It's an act of violence. It is a crime. And Kim whispered at Whitley, like, you know, it's getting a little late. And Whitley says, thank you, Winifred. Ladies, I really hope you take what was said tonight to heart. Meeting adjourned, right? And now Whitley is walking out and says, that was a success. And Lena says, oh, please. Half of the people didn't show up. They'll talk about it tonight, but come morning, they'll be on something new. And Whitley sarcastically says, thank you, Miss Lena. You're always such an inspiration. And Lena's walking off, but Gina just so happened to be walking up and tries to hide, you know, behind the pole. And she got this random long ass bang down the side of her face, right? And Lena sees her face and she's like, what happened to your eye? And Gina say, oh girl, I got into this fight with this girl in Brooks Hall. I don't want it, you know, I don't want anybody to know. And this is up Lena's alley. She's from Baltimore. She asks, what's her name? Where's she at? And Gina say, don't worry about it. She gone. And Lena like, hold up. You got into a fight and didn't want to tell me? And Gina says, stop with the third degree, Sherlock. And Lena says, Gina, if we're as tight as I think we are, you would tell me what the real deal is. And Gina says, maybe we're not that tight. And Lena say, well, you think Dion will tell me? That was you that Freddie saw, wasn't it? And Gina says, that's none of your business. And Lena asks, how did you get that bruise on your leg? And Gina say, I told you already, I bumped into my desk. And Lena catch her in the lie because earlier in the episode she told everybody it was a coffee table. And Gina says, look, it was just an accident, okay? He's just nervous about the concert. And Lena asks, so that gives him a reason to hit you? And Gina says, I'm not asking you to understand. If you want to be my friend, keep this quiet. And Lena tell her, you in trouble. And Gina says, it's my trouble, not yours, not anybody else's, okay? You got it? And Lena says, yeah, I got it. And now it's the next day, and Gina walks in the pit, and Ron sees her and says, oh, well, if it isn't little Stevie Wonder, because she has her shades on, right? And Gina ignores him and walks to the counter and asks Lena if she can get a hamburger. And Lena used this time, right, to throw this situation in her face. She says, well, why don't we make that a steak rare? And Gina says, forget it. And Lena says, if you loved yourself as much as those new shoes, maybe you wouldn't need those shades. And Gina says, look, I don't need your steak, your advice, or that funky little attitude, witch, and walks out. And Kim overhears this and she asks Lena, like, what's that all about? And Lena says, I'm so worried about her. I promised I wouldn't say anything, but she's in real trouble. And Kim asks, school? And Lena says, no. Remember that little situation that Freddie was talking about? And gives her that look and says, yeah. And Kim says, oh, come on. Gina would scratch his eyes out. And Lena says, well, she didn't. And Ron and Dwayne just so happen to walk in, right? And tickets are doing great, of course, right? And Ron says, Kimberly Reese, if things continue to flow, I'm going to be the first drumming, concert promoting businessman. I'm talking limos, condos, and you by my side. And of course she has this stale look, and Dwayne says, I see you still got the magic touch, Ron. She looks thrilled. And Kim don't even wait. She couldn't even wait to tell the whole campus this, right? She just got this info 2 seconds ago and didn't even wait for Lena to walk off, which is what my generation would have done, right? We would have at least done that, right? She blurts out something really serious is going on with Gina. And Lena jumps in and says, Kim, please. That's between me and you. And Kim says something shouldn't be kept a secret. Idiot. I got you. And Dwayne asks, what's going on? And Kim says, I'm down Dion, or whatever the hell he calls himself, has been beating on Gina. And the guys are surprised. They ask, like, where did that come from? And Lena says, Gina, she got a black eye, a bruised leg, and who knows what else. And Dwayne's stupid ass ain't been in a whole episode, right? He asking dumb questions. Telling some, so Lena, did you hear this from Gina herself? And Lena says, no, sarcastically. Like, we talk, of course. All that math knowledge and no common sense. And Ron says, and I've been promoting that punk? Kim, I want you to know, if you were Ron's woman, I'd never beat you. And Dion just so happened to be outside of the pit, right? And Ron says, oh, okay, I need to have a little talk with this brother. Excuse me. And then he walks outside, and Dion talking to an alpha trying to promote his little concert, right? He pulls Dion to the side, and he's like, hey, can I talk to you? Dion says, I always got time for the man who makes me money. And Ron says, rumor has it you get off beating on sisters, namely Gina. And Dion says, yeah? Says who? And Ron says, oh, a reliable source. And Dion says, them tired babes in there? The little one's mad because I won't give her no play. And the other one, Kim, she's mad because I won't give her no play. And Ron says, nah, I may be short, but my foot is long and ready to be fired. And Dion says, yeah, that's right, fired. And Ron says, how about quit, punk? You get off beating women? Let's see how you do against a man. Come on, baby. He said it just like that. Y'all gotta go watch the show. Come on, baby. He was about to crush Dion out there. And they was about to square up, but Dwayne breaks it up and says, slow up, Ron. And Dion says, yeah, you better listen, short red. And Ron says, you're campaigning for a butt whipping and you're about to get elected. And remember, this is 92, so nobody heard that yet. That was a fresh diss to someone you were about to fight at the time, right? And Dwayne tell Dion, he's like, if you got problems controlling your temper, there's places you can go. I'll go with you. And Dion says, look, you need to go somewhere with that Oprah Winfrey mess. Y'all are soft. And then walks off on him. And now we see Freddie doing her radio show. And Dion's show is on right after hers. And of course, lame ass Terrence is there, right? And Dion comes in and says, okay, amateur hour is over. Thank you very much. And Freddie says, you won't get away with what you did to Gina. And Dion says, I'm dedicating a rap to you at the concert. It's called You Make Me Hot. And Freddie says, you make me sick. Terrence, you should be a little bit more particular about the company you keep. And Terrence, he don't even call him Dion. He says, hey, I'm down. He's calling him I'm down. He's like, hey, I'm down. Everyone is tripping off those rumors. And Dion says, man, they just a bunch of gossiping girls. And Terrence asks, they're not telling the truth, are they? And Dion say, not you too. I was gonna let your lame ass meet Teddy too. Look, let me ask you something. You ever hit a woman? And Terrence says, no. And Dion says, nah, be straight up. And Terrence could have just left this to himself, right? But he wants to meet Teddy and be down so bad, right? He's like, well, once when I was 9, I hit my cousin Wanda, but that was because she tried to kiss me. And Dion says, well, you and your cousin probably kissed a lot anyway, right? But when I was 14, growing up in Atlantis apartments, I saw this guy slapping around this woman in the middle of the street. So I jump in, thinking I'm going to help homegirl. You know what she did? She called the cops on me. I learned 2 things from that. 1, every brother can lose it now and again. Even my mom used to push my dad to the limit. And 2, whatever happens between a man and a woman is between that man and that woman. And now we see Lena and Whitley back at Gilbert Hall. And Lena says, I'm trying to make sense of this, but I'm just not getting it. And Whitley says, that's because it doesn't make much sense, Lena. And Whitley sees Gina and says, hey, I need to talk to you. And Gina tries to avoid it. She says, hey, could we do it later? I'm in a hurry. And Whitley says, no, I need to talk to you now, honey. And Gina looks at Lena and says, you opened your mouth, didn't you? You are so two-faced, you witch. And Whitley says, she's your friend, Gina, and so am I. And as soon as that door closed, Gina immediately started explaining herself. She's like, it's not what you think, Whitley. Dion is the sweetest, most romantic guy I've ever gone out with. He's just nervous about the concert, and you know how I am. I'm so self-centered always, I be running off at the mouth, I'm a little flirt too. And Whitley says, there's no excuse for what he did to you. You're much smarter than this. Then Gina breaks down and says, but he loves me, and I don't want to break up with him. I just want him to stop. And Whitley says, throwing jabs. You want him to stop throwing jabs? This is so... I don't mean to laugh, but she's like throwing jabs. You want him to stop throwing jabs and hit you with an uppercut next time, Gina? You're making a big mistake. If you think you can change that boy, he wasn't like this last year. He was a nerd. And Gina says, well, I can try, can't I? Isn't love about sacrifices? Maybe I am being stupid, but I don't even care anymore. See, I guess it's safe to say that Dion is hitting the spot, right? He's hitting the spot both ways. He's giving her an eye jammy, and he's jamming that thing too. I guess it's safe to say that, right? But that's neither here nor there. Look, the Hendrix, right? Let me get back on subject, right? So Whitley says, I think you do, Gina. I think you do care. I think you're embarrassed about that black eye. Believe me, I understand about sacrifices, but I'd rather sacrifice my relationship than my body or my spirit. And Gina says, well, that's easy for you to say. I mean, you've always got somebody. And Whitley says, that's right. And her name is Whitley. Gina, do you really think you need a man who doesn't respect you? And Gina breaks down and says, I better not miss his call, and walks out, right? And now we're back at the pit, and Gina is still wearing her glasses. And by now the whole campus knows her business, thanks to Lena, Freddie, Whitley, and Kim, of course, the biggest mouths on Hillman's campus, right? And Gina's trying to enjoy her tea and think about how she's going to break up with Dion. And here come Mr. Gaines saying, how about a refill? And Gina says, no thanks, Mr. Gaines, but Gaines does it anyway so he can be nosy, right? He says, now I know it's not my place, but it's old folks' nature to butt in. And Gina can't escape this, Bad enough she got to look in the mirror, but now she can't even get a cup of tea, She says, Mr. Gaines, I'm getting too much of that lately. And Mr. Gaines says, I'll make it quick then. Let me tell you a story about my cousin Ada Mae. We grew up together. Ada Mae was always saying, I don't believe my husband loved me unless he hits me once a week. Well, one day her husband loved her to death. And we buried her last year. And then he walks off, right? And now Dion walks in. And he goes, he walks over to Gina and he says, hey, honey dip. Can we go somewhere and talk? And Lena's right there, with a crazy steak blade in her hand, right? But y'all just couldn't see it. That's why the hand is hidden, right? And Lena says, no, you fine. And Gina says, it's okay, Lena. It's okay, And Dion says, Gina, I'll never trip on you like that again. I had no reason to get jealous over Ron. I'm sorry. And Gina says, if your apology is going to be followed up by another fist, you can keep it. And Dion gets aggressive and says, it's not like that. Gina, I love you more than I love myself. And Gina says, like Tina told Ike, what's love got to do with it? And now Dion is blown, right? He's like, where are you getting this? Your friends? They've been butting in? Cause all of a sudden people are asking me to refund their tickets. Sisters talking about me behind my back. You trying to squash me? And Gina says, I'm going to get counseling. I need help. And so do you. And Dion says who? Freddie? And Gina says, no, the mirror. Maybe you should take a look. And Dion says, we need to be alone after he sees that black eye, right? And the campus police come downstairs. And Lena and Terrence, they just so happen to come outside. Like they ready to, get down. And Dion says, look, you all need to mind your own business. We just going to talk. And the campus police asks, look, one of y'all call us? And Dion asks, what's up with all this? And we find out it was Terrence who backstabbed him, right? You was hanging around this guy when you thought it would benefit you. When you thought, you was going to lose your virginity, right? And Terrence jump in and says, yeah, I decided if someone's hitting a sister, it is my business. Not only do you rap messed up lyrics, you live by them. But like a sucker, you walk around, and like a sucker, you going down. The police should have arrested both of them right there, right? Both of them right there. And Dion says, no, I ain't going nowhere. They can't arrest me for having an argument. And Hillman campus police asks, they like, hey, miss, do you want to file a complaint? And Dion says, no one here has a complaint. And Gina says, I do. I want to fill out a report. And now Dion is looking crazy. Because he's getting arrested. You see him, right? And Lena asks Gina, like, you all right? And Gina says, you know what? You were right all along. I am too cute to be wearing these ugly shoes. And Lord knows that was a fact. But see, Dion knew if he can get her to wear those ugly shoes, he could break her jaw, right? But what happens to Dion, right? like in his rap career after this show, right? Because this is Rants and this is what I do, right? Well, after the events that took place on A Different World, Pharrell and Chad was like, dude, you were much cooler when you were a nerd. Now you're trying to act like your cousin Tony Gonzalez? Do your homework on Tony Gonzalez from Virginia Beach. Remember that. And remember, the album In Search Of, well, it still came out, right? 10 years later in 2002. And Dion was replaced with my main man, Shay Haley. That's my main man. Yep. Yeah, Dion wasn't going to be rewarded for spitting them weak-ass bars on Hillman campus and putting his hands on a baddie like Gina. No, I'm not rewarding him for that. No. Although, I like to put my hands on Gina. Especially back then. But yeah, like a sucker, you walk around, and like a sucker, you going down. I wish Dion would have punched Terrence in his face when he said that. But then again, it kind of makes sense he had him around. They were probably original friends because they both were nerds, you know, when they came to Hillman. So it kind of makes sense. But yeah, he was blackballed from the industry. And his father shunned him and decked him again, you know. So, you know, that led him into messing with his cousin Jeezy Gonzalez. You know, but you guys, you know, do your homework on Jeezy Gonzalez from the Tidewater area, of course. You know, I'm not telling you all that. You know, Randumb Rants. Like and subscribe.